"Come on, Grandpa, say your call sign unless your memory retired too." The voice was sharp, laced with condescending amusement, cutting through the metallic echo of boots on deck. The comment froze half the hangar bay. Sunlight spilled through the high steel rafters, bouncing off rows of polished gear and the matte black bodies of training boats lined in strict formation. Recruits slowed their steps. A few turned their heads, exchanging uneasy glances. They all knew that tone, young officer arrogance sharpened to a blade. Commander Rylan Briggs stood tall in his immaculate uniform, the gold trident on his chest catching the light. His smile carried that practiced, easy cruelty of someone who had gotten away with disrespect more than once. Across from him stood an older man, gray hair cropped short, boots worn smooth from miles, sleeves rolled up on a faded maintenance uniform. He held a clipboard, nothing more, but his posture was quiet, steady, and immovable. The old veteran didn't flinch. He simply breathed, slow and controlled. Even that small calm unsettled the air around them. No one expected the old man to look back at him at all. Briggs stepped closer, letting his boots thud loudly, making sure each hit echoed. The younger SEALs standing nearby stiffened. They knew this was no simple joke. When the commander wanted an audience, he got one. "Didn't hear you," Briggs called louder, as if the old man were hard of hearing. "I asked your call sign. You know what they gave you back before GPS, color TV, and modern warfare?" A couple of younger recruits forced a quick grin, unsure whether it was safe to laugh. The older man, whose name tag read simply M. Hale, checked a small note on his clipboard, ignoring the provocation. His hands didn't shake. His breathing didn't waver. His silence grew heavier the longer he held it. That was the first sign something was off. A real elderly civilian would have stuttered apologies, shuffled back, or explained they weren't military. But this man didn't shrink. He didn't explain himself. He simply watched the commander with the patience of someone who'd stood in far worse storms. Briggs smirked. "Come on, old-timer. Humor me. Did you fly a desk? Sweep floors? Fix radios? Or did they let you do something real before your knees gave out?" The words cut a little deeper this time. A few SEALs shifted uncomfortably. A petty officer whispered beside his teammate, "Why's he poking him like that? He's just the maintenance guy." But another shook his head slowly. "He's too calm. Way too calm." Still, the veteran didn't speak. He didn't retreat. He simply met Briggs' stare, steady and unblinking. And for the first time, the commander took half a breath too long. Something in that silent stare felt dangerously out of place. Briggs hated silence, especially when he wasn't the one controlling it. He took another step, closing the space until their boots almost touched. "You know, respect is earned," he said, voice low now. "Not handed out with age. So if you used to be someone, prove it." Hale didn't react. Not with a twitch. Not even a blink. That only fueled Briggs. "What did you do?" he pressed. "Carry ammo? Clean rifles? Drive a deck scrubber? Because unless you had a real call sign one people actually remembered, you're just another old ghost wandering around where you don't belong." A few SEALs shifted, looking at each other uneasily. The disrespect was crossing into dangerous territory now. Everyone could feel it. It was like a cable stretching too tight. But Hale simply set his clipboard down on a crate, folding his hands loosely behind his back. That stance, it wasn't the posture of a maintenance worker. It was controlled. Exactly. Too precise. A few recruits frowned. "That's parade rest," one whispered slowly. But not the version they learned in basic. This was sharper. Older. From somewhere else entirely. Briggs didn't notice. "You're on my deck, old man," he continued. "So I'm asking again. What was your call sign? If you even had one." Still no answer. Inside the hangar, the industrial fans hummed faintly. The distant engines outside on the runway rumbled softly. But around the two men, a strange quiet grew like fog. Hale finally inhaled. Steady. Controlled. The first sound he made all morning. And even that small breath carried weight. A recruit whispered, "Commander should back off." But Briggs wasn't listening. Or maybe he couldn't. His ego stood where his instincts should have. If you want the next chapter, follow quietly. No one realized the power was already shifting, but it was shifting fast. The tension snapped when heavy footsteps approached from behind the formation. Captain Arden Locke, commander of the entire training division, walked into the hangar. The kind of officer who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. His presence alone straightened spines. Conversations died instantly. Briggs stiffened, turning sharply. "Captain on deck." The recruits snapped to attention. Even the machinery seemed to hum quieter. Locke's eyes swept the scene and settled on the older man standing with perfect calm. His expression shifted barely, but enough. Recognition? Memory? Something ancient flickering to life? Is the maintenance check running long? Locke asked, tone mild. But his eyes stayed fixed on Hale, studying every detail. His stance, his posture, and the way he breathed as if this hangar were familiar ground. Briggs jumped in quickly. Just clearing out a civilian, sir. He's refusing to answer basic questions and... Locke lifted one hand, a subtle gesture, but Briggs fell instantly silent. The captain stepped closer to Hale. Are you working under the new contractor? Locke asked, voice polite but probing. Don't think I've seen you assigned to this wing before. Hale simply nodded once. But Locke's gaze lingered on a thin scar running along Hale's right forearm. A strangely shaped one, precise, surgical, unmistakable. A scar known only to a handful of people who survived a specific classified operation. Briggs didn't notice. But Captain Locke did. And the calmness in his eyes deepened. Locke didn't say it aloud, but something about that scar rattled him. Locke folded his hands behind him, mirroring Hale's stance unconsciously. The recruits noticed. Briggs did too, though he didn't understand it. Tell me something, Locke said softly. Where were you stationed, before this contractor job? Hale's answer was simple. North Ridge. The hangar shifted. Not physically but atmospherically. Briggs frowned. What's that supposed to mean? But several older operators inhaled sharply. North Ridge wasn't a base. It was a classified operations hub known only by those who'd been involved in missions no one publicly acknowledged. Locke's voice dropped even lower. North Ridge Alpha Group, or Echo Group? Hale met his eyes, steady. Neither. Sky Division. A ripple of whispers shot through the ranks. Sky Division wasn't rumored. It wasn't whispered about. It was a ghost story told in training about an experimental airborne recon and strike group only activated during Black Zone emergencies over 20 years ago. Only 5 known operatives survived the division's final mission. And only one was rumored to still be alive. Proof beat number 1 activated. Briggs' face went pale for half a second before arrogance shoved the fear away. Sky Division? That's just old mythology. Stories instructors tell too. But Locke cut him off with a single look. Cold. Warning. Hale finally bent down, retrieving the clipboard, moving with fluid precision, no hesitation, no stiffness. Someone who had rehearsed thousands of controlled motions under stress. Proof beat number 2 activated. A recruit whispered, Sir. That's a combat stance. Briggs swallowed hard. So what? Guys are just old military. Probably pushing his luck. Locke exhaled slowly. Call sign, he said quietly, not demanding, not mocking. Asking. The hangar air tightened as if every molecule leaned forward. This time Hale answered. And even before he spoke, the silence warned them all. Something enormous was coming. Briggs didn't know it yet, but his joke was about to detonate. Hale lifted his chin just slightly, barely a movement, but enough to command the room. My call sign, he said calmly, was Silver Sky. It hit the hangar like a shockwave. Not loud, no shouted reactions, no gasps, but a ripple of breathlessness swept through the ranks. Several SEALs froze mid-movement. A petty officer dropped a wrench without realizing it. Briggs blinked. Silver, who? But Locke's blood drained from his face. Silver Sky, he repeated quietly. From Operation Helios Run. The room fell deeper into silence. Operation Helios Run wasn't declassified. It wasn't supposed to be mentioned anywhere. It was the mission where Sky Division inserted behind a collapsing war zone to evacuate an entire trapped reconnaissance team when every other unit had refused the risk. Only one pilot volunteered. Only one made the impossible flight path. Only one call sign became legend among a select group of operators. Silver Sky. Proof beat number 3, Locke recognizing the call sign. Hale finally continued, voice composed. I was told the files were sealed, he said. Didn't expect the title to follow me here. Locke stepped forward, posture straightening, not in command but in respect. Sir, you're the reason half my graduating class lived to see daylight. Your maneuver through the canyon line, no one has replicated it since. Hale simply dipped his head. Briggs' throat tightened. He's just a contractor. This is some kind of joke. Locke rounded on him. Commander, stand down. The tone wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It hit like a hammer. Briggs staggered back a half step. Locke returned his attention to the older man. If I may ask, why are you working maintenance? Hale looked down at his hands. After 26 years behind a flight stick, I thought the quiet might be good for me. The simplicity of the answer hurt more than any boast ever could. If this moment hit you, share it forward. Briggs finally realized he hadn't insulted a relic. He'd insulted a legend. Briggs stood frozen, the color draining from his face as if someone had pulled a plug. His jaw moved but no words formed. The recruits around him stepped back instinctively, giving the moment room to breathe. Hale simply adjusted the edge of his sleeve, returning to stillness. The silence in the hangar shifted from tension to reverence. Even the hum of machinery seemed to soften, as though the entire structure knew who was standing inside it. A few younger SEALs looked at Hale with stunned recognition, connecting stories they'd heard with scars they now saw. One whispered, "Silver Sky is real." Another whispered back, "He saved my instructor's team." Briggs swallowed, eyes darting between Hale and Locke. Shame settled over him like a heavy vest. "Sir, I didn't know," he finally choked out, voice cracking. Hale didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't lean into the power he rightfully held. He simply said, "You weren't supposed to know." His voice was gentle yet steadier than steel. Briggs took a slow step forward, posture faltering. I disrespected you. I should never have." Hale raised a hand, cutting him off with calm finality. "Respect isn't about rank. It's how you treat people when you think they're no one." The words hit harder than any reprimand. Locke watched, eyes heavy with understanding. A few officers exchanged glances that held both shame and admiration. The hangar's atmosphere shifted again, this time to quiet reflection. Briggs lowered his head. "You're right." Hale remained silent, letting the truth settle on its own weight. No anger. No humiliation returned. Just quiet correction. But the consequences of Briggs' arrogance were still waiting to land. Captain Locke stepped forward, his expression turning formal again. Authority sharpened his voice. "Commander Briggs," he said, "your conduct toward personnel, contracted or otherwise, falls beneath what this command expects." Briggs straightened, bracing for impact. "This isn't your first incident," Locke continued. "And clearly the lesson hasn't settled." Briggs opened his mouth, but Locke lifted a hand. "You will report to my office at 1600 for disciplinary action. Until then, you are relieved from all field oversight." It wasn't shouted. It wasn't cruel. It was decisive. The recruits stood motionless. No one dared whisper. Briggs nodded stiffly, jaw clenched, humiliation burning through him like fever. "Understood, sir." Locke turned to Hale next. "If you ever wish to rejoin us in an advisory role, the door is open." Hale simply nodded. "I appreciate that." Then he reached down, lifted his clipboard again, and resumed his quiet stance, as if nothing legendary had been spoken at all. The contrast cut deeper than any anger could have. Briggs stepped back from the group, each footstep heavier than the last, his earlier arrogance dissolving into something painfully human. But Silver Sky wasn't finished teaching him. One lesson remained. As Briggs turned to leave, Hale spoke, soft, steady, and unmistakably deliberate. "Commander." Briggs froze. Hale walked forward, stopping just close enough to be heard by him alone. The hangar leaned in, silently listening. "You carry responsibility now," Hale said. "Men look to you. Some for strength. Some for guidance. Some for protection from your pride." Briggs swallowed, eyes burning. Hale continued, "One day you'll face a moment you can't take back. When that day comes, choose humility. It'll save more lives than arrogance ever will." The words weren't a threat. They were a gift, one carved from decades of surviving what others didn't. Briggs nodded, voice cracking. "I will, sir." Hale touched his shoulder lightly, briefly. A gesture more powerful than rank. Then he stepped back to his quiet position, returning to his maintenance work as if nothing extraordinary had ever happened. But everyone watching knew better. His final lesson echoed long after the engines outside began to rumble again. The hangar returned to motion slowly, recruits moving with a new, reverent quiet. Captain Locke paused at the doorway, giving the veteran one last respectful nod before stepping out into the sunlight. Hale stood alone beside the training boats, adjusting a single bolt with deliberate care. The faint hum of distant aircraft rolled through the open bay doors. For a moment, a soft flashback color shift washed the scene, the shimmer of a canyon sunset, the echo of rotor blades, and the low rumble of a memory too deep for words. Then it faded. Hale exhaled. Not a legend. Not a ghost. Just a man who once carried the sky. And still carried the silence. Some call signs fade, but Silver Sky never did.